an intro. I'll introduce myself. I'll introduce you, and I'll say. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first episode of 2023 of Goon Squad. We're back after 4 years of hiatus. The world has changed. We have changed. Our political opinions have changed. Everything has changed. And I'm back, OGAnarchy, and I have my first guest, the original guest of this episode is going to be Spitfire 7. Say hello, Spitfire.
Hello, this is Spitfire 7. Yep, as Anarchy mentioned, I was the original guest on the kind of Goon Squad, chatted up kind of videos. If y'all have watched it, that is me. Hello.
And we're going to have a lot more guests on this show. I got people lined up that want to be on this show, so there will be plenty of different opinions on this show, and different people from all walks of life will be on this show. But we're going to start off with the OG Spitfire, and I'm sure if you like it, we'll make sure to try to get him to come back and do another episode. Hopefully this takes off and isn't too cringy. But we're going to start with politics for this first episode. So we're at the I Side With website that's been out for a while. They have a 2023 political quiz, and we're going to start off with domestic policy issues. So the first question I'm going to ask Spitfire is, and we will see if we agree or disagree and have discussion. Should internet service providers be allowed to speed up access to popular websites that pay higher rates at the expense of slowing down access to less popular websites that pay lower rates? Yes, no, or another stance? What do you think, Spit?
For the most part, I kind of think yes, because you've got it kind of, as far as I know, it functions the same as if you're paying an ISP. So if I'm paying Google Fiber, if I'm paying Spectrum, if I'm paying AT&T, if I pay more money, I'm gonna get faster speeds. If I'm paying less money, I'm gonna get less speeds. Um, More or less, as long as there's a consistency to it, and as long as the service provider that is hosting the site doesn't have differing rules for differing people, then it should be fine.
Okay, don't you think though, this is just me being the devil's advocate,
Okay.
that can be abused because um say for example, like, the media these days is so polarized, right? The media likes to have people believe what they want them to believe, and the truth is very skewed, and you have to look at things from multiple angles. If we have companies that maybe, for example, I'm not saying it's true, but like, if Spectrum was owned by George Soros, maybe Spectrum would push like a bunch of left leaning websites, like, you know, left leaning news websites, and they would throttle it so that it'd be harder to get onto right leaning news websites or independent news sites. And it could be the other way around. But, like, isn't it, when you don't treat everyone fairly in terms of the internet, isn't it opening up the door to possibly being uh, taken advantage of?
So as far as I'm understanding this question, it's asking, should should sites that pay more money, should they have access to, faster speeds, better connections? That doesn't touch on should the service hosts differentiate between people based on political opinion? We already see that kind of happening. Like currently, the largest website host services are Google Web Services and Amazon Web Services, and they obviously are already doing this. You can see this through Alphabet owns Google. They're the parent company of Google. They're the parent company of YouTube. It's already fairly evident that YouTube has preferences on what kind of political content they want to put out there. You can just, go onto their suggested. You log out of your YouTube channel, you throw on a VPN, and you can see they're only going to be pushing, left of center or to left wing content. You're never going to see, Tim Pool, Steven Crowder, Ben Shapiro, Lex Friedman. You're not going to see any of them show up on YouTube's front page. It's not going to happen. So I'm sort of operating under this question, assuming everything is neutral. Should people who should channels, should people who pay more money, I'm assuming there would be a subscription service tiers similar to an ISP, like, $80 a month will get you this amount of speed, $100 a month will get you more speed, $200 a month will get you even more speed, even more bandwidth, whatever. Assuming it functions on a similar principle to that, and is politically neutral, then yes, there shouldn't be any problem with it. If we're talking about neutrality when it comes down to dissemination of content, that I feel is probably another question entirely in and of itself, and we've seen already what exists. Elon Musk, with releasing the Twitter files, we've seen that Twitter definitively has been supporting left-wing creators, left-wing ideas, left-wing, all of that, through suppression of right-wing media, right-wing creators, and everything like that. Have you been keeping up with the Twitter files?
Yes, I have.
It's
some interesting stuff. It kind of pulls back the curtain even on our own government.
it is bombshell level stuff. I would recommend anybody who's watching this go look it up, listen to it. My personal recommendation is, go find my personal recommendation is Tim Pool for this stuff. I doubt we're ever going to get big enough to the point where Tim Pool's going to start, doing shout-outs to us, but I'm full well willing to be like, find Tim Pool, find what he says about the Twitter files. He is very moderate. He's pretty much right in the middle when it comes down to politics. You can tell because people on the right will call him left-wing, people on the left will call him right-wing. So it kind of balances out. Just see what he's saying on the Twitter files. It's very interesting. It's definitely something you should be, paying attention to.
For sure. All right, you want to move on to our next question?
Yeah, sure.
That I have on this political quiz. So our next question is going to be, this is a juicy one. Should there be more restrictions on the current process of purchasing a gun?
More than, what is it, the 20,000 laws already on the books? No, definitely not.
I agree. No. Okay,
there should, if anything, there should be far fewer restrictions. And I believe that, I know that this is going to be like us talking back and forth about it, but just a little bit of news. There was a Supreme Court case not all too long ago that, potentially, it's throwing gun laws into chaos at the moment, potentially may have just outlawed, Bruin, which it may have potentially outlawed just about every single gun law on the books today.
Yep.
As unconstitutional.
And New York and California are fighting it tooth and nail, and so is Oregon.
Yep.
Because Oregon's done some fuck shit. If no one's heard, Oregon has made it where you're going to start having to require a permit from your sheriff's office just to purchase a gun. So, what is this world? Okay. Next question. Should teachers be allowed to carry guns at school?
Okay, so in the case when it comes down to gun laws, this is probably the one singular exception I would have. Assuming they pass a certification test, yes. Yes, they should.
I say that under no circumstances should teachers carry guns, and that's just because kind of what you say, like the average teacher is just like any other person down the street. I mean, there's people out there just because you have a right to own firearms. There's people out there that couldn't, and like I know people. There's like hotheads out there. There's people that would use. They just naturally they don't have that responsibility. There's people aimlessly walking through life. Everyone's seen it. The fucking person that just accidentally runs a red light and gets T-boned, and they were like, "Oh my, I didn't even know I was red." Like people like that don't need to be owning guns. And I'm not saying teachers are dumb people, but I'm just saying that the average teacher is a lot like the average person, and also owning guns and being a responsible firearms owner requires a lot of attention. Oh shit! Give me a sec.
Lost your train of thought.
Oh,
You good?
uh, it quit recording on me. We can only do 10 minutes at a time.
Ah, okay. Well,
But let's
I
see.
I do have this up on a stream, so
Okay, I'll just start again. Part two.
all right.
Okay, as I was saying before we were rudely interrupted, splice this together. Sorry, guys. It only records 10 minutes at a time. I'm not paying for it. We'll get this all figured out. We'll get the kinks figured out eventually.
Yep.
But for episode one, we're just kind of trial by firing it. Anyways, teachers, I'm not saying are stupid, but teachers in general are their passions are teaching kids. Someone who is a responsible firearms owner. There are teachers that are responsible firearms owners. I think Hickok45 on YouTube is a history teacher, but
Mm-hmm.
he's like anyone else. It's like not everyone's thrilled about guns. Not everyone can handle a gun. Not everyone can be a responsible adult when you have a firearm, which is a instrument that has the ability to take away human life very easily if you're not safe. And I believe that we should have more security, and we should have better trained SROs and rapid response teams, better than the ones that were at Uvalde, Texas, that didn't do anything. But I do think that I think we need that. I don't think we need to tell the average teacher, like fucking 35-year-old Miranda, that's the math teacher, hey, you need to start carrying a Glock, and we're going to train you. Because also, shouldn't be forced to be trained, and we shouldn't have to put that responsibility on them. My mom's a teacher, and I know that teachers these days, it's a very unforgiving job. They're very overworked, underappreciated. The last thing we need to do is also put them um, with the responsibility of protecting themselves and those kids. We need to have other people do that job. There's plenty of jobs you can make from doing that, and security jobs, and even county sheriff's office jobs that you could create specifically for protecting schools. But I don't think we need to have any sort of teachers being armed in the classroom.
That's exactly why I was. I don't think that the average teacher, not only is going to be capable, but is going to be willing to carry a firearm. Especially when they think, hey, there's a possibility I may have to raise this gun on a student that I am teaching, on a child that I am teaching. And that is something that I just simply put do not believe a vast majority of teachers are going to be able to do. Which is why I said, assuming they pass a certification test for it. Something that requires mental health examination to prove that they have, some sort of knowledge of firearms and how to use them and how to store them safely, that kind of stuff. This is the one exception to firearm laws that I'm willing to make. Now, of course, I will always say, and I will always recommend, this should be the first line of security. We should have security guards, dedicated security guards at schools. That would be better than arming teachers. Um,
What
but
about you said mental evaluations and stuff, but what about if there was a teacher like Hickok45 that's a big gun guy and he's already got his concealed carry permit? and he's already done like the fingerprinting, gone down to the sheriff's office, taken the class. Are you saying that he would not be fit to carry until he had gone and done a mental evaluation, even though he had satisfied the state's needs for him to carry a gun in public? Is that because of him being in a classroom with kids, well, with a gun?
Yeah, I do think there is going to be at least a little bit of a difference when it comes down to, you know, carrying a gun with the intent to protect, the children inside of the school, potentially from another child who ended up getting a hold of a firearm
Damn,
through
so you're
whatever
talking about
means.
a child stealing a teacher's firearm, and then
N-
another
Uh,
teacher.
no. Most of the time, as we've seen in school shootings before, it's,
Oh, you mean a child coming into
yeah,
the
a child
school?
coming in from the school, a child coming in from the school. But again, this is why the certification program, as you just mentioned, this is why the certification program should show that, proper storage instructions on, hey, if you assuming you pass, and it's going to be very rigorous, ideally, ideally it would be somebody similar to Hickok 45 who, has the concealed carry permit, has proved proved time and time again that they are responsible, that they know how to handle a firearm, that, they've proven themselves to be, a responsible firearm owner. Um, Ideally, it's going to be somebody like that, and at the very least, if not in, say, if not kindergartens, elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, at the very least, it should be permitted in colleges and universities, because at that point, your students are adults.
Here
Um,
where we live, we have on-campus carry instead of
yes, yes. The state of I believe it's Kansas, Missouri, and Texas all allow concealed carry on campus. Um, the most I'd be willing to extend that down to, with regards to the teachers, would probably be high school. Again, assuming they pass a certification.
I say any place that someone's going to be under the age of 18, that you're going to be with a group of people under the age of 18 for like 8 hours in the day. I say it's not good. I say junior college, college. It's just because high school, like, a lot of these fucking shooters are like 16, 17, 18. Like, they're high school age. And I think a lot of people go through a very transformative experience in high school. And I think that, I don't know, if, our high school we went to, there were probably 100 teachers there. I don't know, maybe 50 or 60, but I'm over exaggerating. But there were at least 50. And like, you imagine that 50 teachers, they're all armed, that 50 Glocks. 50 Glocks in one school. I mean, one teacher, all they have to do is misplace it, or, oh, I don't want to wear this thing, it's bothering me, I'm going to put it in my drawer or something.
Again,
Even if
that's
even if,
why
even if you're
certification.
properly trained, you can't expect a 100% compliance rate. I mean, we don't get that anywhere. There's
Yeah,
going to be one
well,
outlier, one or two outliers. All it takes is the wrong student getting a hold of that. I mean, when I was in middle school, we had someone steal those wolf bucks out of Mr. Beidelman's desk. The money that we would use as currency for doing good in class. Someone, I'm not going to say who, I know who, went over to his desk while he was out of the room and grabbed like a stack of wolf bucks. It's like,
yeah, but we're not talking every single teacher's going to have this. It's going to be a very small number of teachers who not only want to do it, but will be qualified to do it. So we're not looking at, 50 teachers, 50 Glocks inside of a school. We're maybe looking at, 50 teachers, and there might, a very small percentage, have one teacher that's armed in the school. And even if, say, for example, we don't want to have teachers armed, at the very minimum, I believe there should be dedicated security guards in the school, not just, some local officer that's been appointed to be a school officer. I think like an actual dedicated security guard, somebody ideally, military veteran, something like that, who, pass mental health test. Assuming they pass a mental health test, they're allowed to carry on school grounds. There needs to be somebody on school grounds who can respond quickly, because
what
you did
about
mention,
SROs?
um security resource officers.
Yeah,
In Uvalde, they completely failed.
Well, in Uvalde, they completely failed. That's what I'm saying. Instead of doing a certification program for teachers, we should have better trained SROs. We should have SROs maybe. I mean, a lot of the SROs here where we live are actual police officers. Uvalde had its own school police, kind of like how Shawnee Mission has their own school police, and they have a school police resource or rapid response team, and those were the motherfuckers that showed up and just stood outside for an hour after their own SRO had run out too. They were all part of the school police, and I think that's what the big issue is like, obviously those people weren't trained enough. They're not in the right mindset. They're not willing to die for those kids. And I hate to say it, but if you're an SRO, you need to be willing to put your life on the line for those kids. That's part of the responsibility of doing that job. You can't just run out and say, fuck this. You got to take care of business when it comes. And you can't think that it's always never going to come. Now, I'm going to continue my thought process here, but we're going to go to commercial break for a second. So we'll talk when we get back right after this message. I had to restart the 10 minutes. I'll come up with a commercial.
Yeah, you'll come up with a commercial.
All right. Okay, we're back after the commercial break. Still here with Spitfire 7.
Hello, hello.
And we were talking about SROs. So I think SROs need to be properly trained. I also think that whatever they have in their patrol car, that's not important because they can't get out there. Maybe an SRO should be the only one with access to maybe a locker that has a rifle in it. Because I know a lot of SROs only carry their handgun when they're in the school, and they maybe have a rifle or a shotgun out in their car. I would say maybe the SRO has a, AR-15 with a couple mags or something.
Okay.
Locked up in a case somewhere.
So
they have the key to it.
Okay, so
and more training, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, so going on with regards to the failure of SROs, the repeated failure of SROs, again, Uvalde is probably the most recent example.
Believe
it was
in Florida.
Yes.
SRO also walked out.
Yeah, I was trying to remember the name of the school.
Stoneman Douglas.
Yeah, Stoneman Douglas. That was probably the most egregious example of an SRO failing to do their job. And one of the issues is there was a Supreme Court case, I'm forgetting which one it is at the moment, that pretty much deemed that no, police officers do not have any legal nor constitutional obligation to protect you. They don't. It may be, kind of the police motto, serve and protect, but there is no constitutional obligation for a police officer to protect you. And therefore, there's no obligation for an SRO who is a member of the police to protect the students.
There should be.
No doubt there should be.
If you are, especially, maybe not a beat cop walking down the street, but like an SRO that is literally there for the security and of the school, should have the obligation and the mental mindset that they are there to die for these kids if necessary.
Yeah,
because of that, they deserve to get paid more. I don't know.
Which is why maybe instead of an SRO, we have like actual dedicated, security guards, proper security guards, not just an SRO from, a local police department. Yeah, like
paid privatized security.
Yes, and it can be, as I mentioned, assuming passing a mental health evaluation, veterans. Like military veterans. It gives them a job, it gives them something to do, it gives them, something that's in, obviously, the skill set that they picked up while they were in the military. And it's overall probably the best option. Because you're going to, at least I'm going to hope, you are less likely to come across the issue of an SRO abandoning their job, abandoning their duty to the children. Which, again, we've seen happen far too many times. It's not something that should be allowed to pass.
There's going to be a higher accountability too. Like if there's just one SRO, maybe he feels outnumbered or outgunned, and that's why he runs off. But if there's 3 or 4 guys there, they're gonna kind of maybe keep each other in check and be like, "Oh, where you running off to? No, we're staying here."
Even
Or
I don't necessarily bank on that either, because again, as we saw during Uvalde, they had basically, what
I
was
know,
it,
but we're just
8, 10
brainstorming
officers?
ideas.
Yeah, it needs to be something that, some way that whoever is going to be protecting these children can be definitively held accountable. Uh, Again, I'm just going to bring up the Uvalde. We had what, 8, 10, 12 officers with riot shields and AR-15s and all that standing around. They actually had to bring in more officers for the specific purpose of preventing parents from going in and saving their own children. So,
Oh,
yeah, it was
I I
bad.
think we spent enough time on that question. Let's move on to some more questions here. Now we're off of domestic issues. We are now on the national security issues. So the first question is: should the president be able to authorize military force against Al Qaeda without congressional approval? I say
Um,
no.
I believe to an extent the president. Again, I agree. No. But I believe the president already, to an extent, has a limited ability to do this. I think they can do it constitutionally for 30 days without congressional approval, and then after that, to a very small limited amount, and then after that, they require congressional approval. Um, I guess my question is, should that ability of the president be taken away? Because as we
Oh
saw
no,
with
no. The president should be able to request approval, like being like Congress. Hey, we need to take care of these guys. They can go ask that, but
mhm.
I don't think any the president should have any ability to like push the button and be like bomb them without consulting or
Yeah, because this is,
no.
and I'm going to pick a bit on both sides because both sides have done this. If we look at George Bush, 2001, he did go in initially without congressional approval. Obviously, he ended up getting it for obvious reasons. I believe that, at least at the time, that was justified. Policies that came afterwards, that's another question. Patriot Act, that's something we can touch on later. But we saw, I'm forgetting what year it was, Obama with, what was it, Yemen? Yemen or Libya? He sent troops in without congressional approval, and I do not believe he ever ended up getting congressional approval. But we still have troops there, as far as I'm aware. Um,
Libya was Benghazi in 2011.
yeah, I'm pretty sure you're right there. So yeah, Obama sent troops in without congressional approval, and started a war, which ended up, if I'm remembering right, it was that war ended up, we ended up pulling out troops from that area underneath the Trump administration. Am I right in that?
I can't I'm not an expert on that. I can't comment on that. The only thing I can say is that when it comes to war where multiple innocent people will lose their lives, it should require more than the thought process of one person before going into a situation like that.
Yeah. So I
You don't
think
give one person the power.
we're probably relatively in agreement that
Okay.
that even the president's current power, the ability to, go in for 30 days with a limited force, maybe that should be taken away. So that way, it doesn't potentially twist the arm of Congress to start a war.
Okay. Next question just kind of follows up with that. Should the U.S. assassinate suspected terrorists in foreign countries? Should we be allowed
Suspected
without?
terrorists?
Yeah, so like, I think it says suspected because like for example, like we know a guy. For example, like this is totally hypothetical, but a guy in Turkey that sells guns to the Russians, who in part sell them to Syrians, and they're used to kill people by Bashir al-Assad's regime. Turkey's going to deny that. Turkey's but oh, our guy hasn't done anything. We like him or something. because we don't have very good relations with Turkey,
Um,
and us without anyone's permission send a hit team or fucking use a drone strike and kill the guy in some foreign country without anyone's permission. For example, like that the Iranian general in 2020, right before COVID hit.
mhm.
I forgot his fucking name, but Iran called him a hero. He was what his name was, Soleimani or whatever, General Soleimani.
Yep.
Unless that's from Call of Duty. But he was a hero to Iran, but we called him a war criminal because of all the stuff he did when he was in.
To give partial deference to the United States and their decision to do that, you said what was Iran? I'm pretty sure if you look at like Irani parliament, I think it's parliament that they have or something like that. They're you can find videos of them with burning an American flag and chanting in their language,
See,
death to America.
But I'm saying, like, yeah, regardless if Iran likes us or not, they called this guy a hero. We called him a killer, and then we literally drone striked him in his own country, like without asking Iran, and just because we're like, oh, this guy's a bad guy, we gotta take him out. Oh shit! Give me a second.
Okay.
Just because he's a bad guy, and they're like, oh, we gotta take him out. So, I don't know. I think the U.S. has offed people before that probably didn't need to be off.
Yes, definitively they have.
Definitely killed people or at least gone after people. Edward Snowden doesn't deserve to be attacked by the U.S.
Hold on. I actually have a name which plays kind of your point. During the Obama administration, Obama, I believe it was a drone strike, blew up a 16-year-old American citizen, Anwar al-Awlaki. I forget. I don't know how to pronounce his name exactly, but legitimately because his father, I believe, was a suspected terrorist. Using that term, suspected terrorist. And when asked about this, the ACLU did, send a lawsuit after the Obama administration, and more or less when asked, I believe it was someone from the DOD, head of the DOD or somebody like that, when asked about it, their response more or less was he should have had a better father. That is not something that is okay in the slightest.
That's not.
Yeah. It was 2011 drone strike. And the kid was out in Yemen. Again, this is I think it was 2011 that you meant what started the war with Yemen.
We were in Yemen and Libya.
Yeah. But yeah, that drone strike 2011, I believe that may have been the flashpoint for that. But the United States bombed a kid and a bunch of other civilians.
I don't think the U.S. should be allowed to bomb people outside of the country just because of their suspicions, because the U.S. not always has the best judgment.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious the United States very often doesn't exactly have the best judgment.
At least we shouldn't do anything without consulting our international allies.
Yes. If we can prove without a doubt that the target of whatever strike it is has been, is, and will continue to be, a major threat to the United States, not just interests of the United States, like, maintaining oil reserves over in the Middle East or whatnot. Not just interests of the United States, just a threat to the United States itself, then maybe. But for the most case, no. Yeah, too many times the United States has done something, we've blown up innocent children because we got intel wrong. And that's not okay. It's definitely not okay.
All right. Well, I think we agree on that one. Let's move on to the next one. Should the government increase, or we're in foreign policy now? Should the government increase or decrease military spending?
What's current U.S. military spending? $780 some odd billion a year. Something high. But I believe it's still less than 20% of U.S. discretionary spending is military, despite what some people like to say.
If you asked me a year ago, I would have said we need to slow it down. But everything going on in the world and be inching closer to World War III, I'd say keep it where it's at. If not, maybe increase it a little bit.
I think in my mind it should be maintained to a point where we retain technological supremacy over geopolitical enemies, namely
high geological supremacy. What you said?
Technological supremacy over geopolitical enemies. Geological. we should.
Better rocks.
Better rocks. I mean, very spicy rocks. We can throw very spicy rocks at geopolitical enemies. But yes, we should be maintaining, ideally our 30-year technological advantage over geopolitical enemies. China, Russia primarily. Mostly China. Russia's a paper tiger, honestly.
It's falling apart, but I'm afraid they're trying to take the rest of the world with it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go on to the next one. Should foreign terrorism suspects be given constitutional rights? No.
They're not a U.S. citizen, so no.
Foreign terrorism, does that mean they're foreign or they committed foreign acts? There's Americans that have gone to do international terrorism.
Okay, so repeat the question.
Like when it says should foreign terrorism suspects, is it saying they're foreign as in like they are from another nationality?
That's what I'm.
As in they have committed international. I think it means they're not American.
Yeah, I think it means that they're not American, and no, they're not Americans. They're not American citizens. They're not American citizens. They are not entitled to protections for American citizens. Exactly. Just done. There you go.
Sucks for you. Don't commit terrorism.
You want constitutional rights? Become a U.S. citizen. That's it.
Should every 18-year-old citizen be required to provide at least 1 year of military service?
Maybe not military service, but some form of public service. I'm very big on that. I know that it's a very common misconception. You know, Starship Troopers, right?
Yeah.
It's a very common misconception that is a portrayal of fascism, when in fact it's a portrayal pretty much exactly the opposite. Fascism is almost the idea that citizenship guarantees service. If you are a citizen of the country, you have to serve the country. The idea of service guarantees citizenship. You serve the country, and you are guaranteed your citizenship. Yes. Some form of public service. It doesn't necessarily need to be military. It could be some form of civilian public service.
Mail.
Yeah.
Gotta be a mailman for a year.
Gonna be a mailman for you. But yeah, some form of civil service to the country. Yes, it should be required.
I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say nothing should be required. I think it should be encouraged. I think maybe you should get a credit. Like if you go do a year of government service or civil service, maybe you get a year of college paid. You have a lot of people volunteering for that.
Oh, okay. So let me explain it slightly. So again, I'm gonna bank on Starship Troopers here for a little bit because it is actually really. Yes, but the political ideas espoused in it are actually pretty important, pretty good actually. So in Starship Troopers, there are civilians and there are citizens. The only difference between civilians and citizens is whether or not they can vote. They all get so assuming United States, that would mean every person born in the United States, every person who would be I guess in our knowledge would be considered a citizen. They get all the same rights as, people who are considered to be citizens, except they can't vote unless they've done civil service. And it doesn't have to be military.
You can't vote unless you've done military service?
No, civil service. Civil service. That doesn't necessarily mean military.
Yeah, that's taking away the right to vote. That's part of the Constitution.
Is it part of the Constitution? Because part of the Constitution was land-owning males would vote. That's what it was set as.
They've since amended it, I believe. It gives everyone the right to vote if you're a U.S. citizen.
But, okay, so I guess this kind of touches on civil versus constitutional rights. Voting is a civil right. It can be taken away. Felons who are in prison do not, or domestic abusers don't have the right to vote.
Can be taken away if you are a felon. That's a constitutional right.
Yeah, but we're in this case we're talking about civil rights, not constitutional rights. Voting, if I'm remembering correctly, is not a specifically enumerated constitutional right.
Is voting a constitutional right?
Like, do correct me if I'm wrong.
In the U.S. Constitution, voting is a right. Many constitutional amendments have been ratified since the first election. However, none of them. Give me a second. Hit my 10 minutes again. Many constitutional amendments have been ratified since the first election. However, none of them have made voting mandatory for U.S. citizens. That's from USA.gov. This Democracy Docket website says there was no right to vote in the original U.S. Constitution. It merely states that anybody eligible to vote for the largest house of the state's legislature is also eligible to vote for members of the House of Representatives. As a result, states were left to decide who could vote.
As far as I can see, and I'm also looking up right now, there doesn't seem to be an enumerated right to voting.
Let's see here. The 14th Amendment extends citizenship to all natural-born or naturalized Americans, regardless of race, and guaranteed the rights of citizenship. Like voting, cannot be restricted by the states. The 15th Amendment prohibits restricting the right to vote due to race. The 17th Amendment requires states to elect senators by popular vote. The 19th Amendment extends voting rights to all women. The 26th Amendment extends the right to vote to everyone 18 years of age and older.
Okay, yes, and this is talking primarily about rights of citizens, not directly rights of voting. It's rights of citizens, which includes voting. Again, as a civil right, which can be revoked, which, again, can be revoked for multiple different reasons. So, again, similarly, as you mentioned, to, like, firearms, but firearms is a constitutionally enumerated right. Voting is not. So, and again, I'm not necessarily saying that, non-citizens, well, yes, not non-citizens, as we understand citizens currently. Non-citizens should not be able to vote.
Citizens like 5 times and you lost me.
Okay.
You're like citizens, non-citizens.
It's a little. I'm trying to almost grapple with this idea of trying to explain the concept of service guarantees citizenship and separating out specific civil rights, such as voting, pretty much specifically just voting, from just merely, simply because you exist in the United States, you have the right to do it. So I think that having a stake in the country, having, put something into it, having proven that you were invested in trying to improve the country, should, I believe, grant you the right to vote. I don't think that any other rights, such as the ability to keep and bear arms, freedom of speech, and whatnot, those should not be taken away. It's, again, I'm specifically talking about voting. Service guarantees citizenship. You do something to prove that you're invested inside of the continuation and the betterment of the United States, you should be allowed to vote. Period. Am I?
People that don't serve can't vote.
Yes, but they are.
Are they grandfathered in? Is it going to be like a?
Okay. I'm assuming that there's going to be some form of grandfather clause. Yes. But the point is, you don't have to continually serve all the time. You merely have to do, say, 1 to 2 years of some form of civil service. Again, it doesn't have to be military service. Some form of public service that contributes towards the betterment of the United States, in the view of the United States. And then you gain the right to vote.
And we're going to disagree on this, because that doesn't feel American.
It's not something that is more or less in modern sense. It wouldn't be viewed as American in a modern sense. It was more or less originally something that was viewed as, constitutionally original. Again, landowners were the ones who were able to vote. If you were owning land, you were likely using it to produce something, to contribute towards the United States.
Okay, we're going to go on to the next question.
Okay.
We're going to keep flying through these. Domestic policy. Man, there was a really good one here. Oh, here it is. Economic issues. And we can do more if we want to do just domestic policy, I can. But I thought we'd just touch on a wide variety today. And then maybe we could go through an individual one next time. But for this one, this is a question that is going to be very spicy. And if anyone watches this video, you may hate me after this.
Spicy questions, okay. This is the fun stuff.
Spicy. This is spicy because I know a lot of people are heated about this right now. And I don't believe it's an issue. And maybe that's because I'm a white man, but that's what some people would say. But
yeah, I mean, you're technically mixed. You're less white than I am.
Well, Hispanics are considered white. I hate to say it. When our government papers are supposed to put Hispanic white because they're just two separate questions. I don't know why they do that. There's no brown because the only other options are Black, Pacific Islander, Native American, or other. Or Asian.
I mean, I guess you technically fit under other, but I don't know. Anyways, what is the question?
Anyways, without Spitfire trying to identify me, this question is spicy. Should employers be required to pay men and women the same salary for the same job? And I'm going to say they do. You get paid what you're worth. Men and women same opportunity to get paid the same at any job. The difference is work ethic, and I have to say, it's going to sound really misogynist to some people, but in general, men slave away at their jobs a lot more than women. I think out there's a statistic, I can't find it right now, I'm not going to look for it, but in my brain, just from my life experience, and I'm sure Max, Spitfire 7, whatever. Say that he's experienced the same thing. That in general, like, females miss a lot more work. I don't know. They I'm not saying maternity leave. I'm just saying, like, there's girls out there that work harder than men. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. I'm boxing myself into a very particular corner. I'm gonna get canceled on episode.
I think I might be able to save your ass on this. Okay. Just continue your thought process.
No, you go. I'm
okay.
Take a break from this before
so assuming equal qualifications, equal certification, assuming all things are equal and they work the same amount of hours, same amount of whatever, yes, they should be paid equally. Period. What we see statistically is that men will work longer hours, men will work harder, they will push, and they're more likely to push into trying to get into a higher level job, they're more likely to push for harder work, for more challenging work, and often will take up more dangerous work. And so, yes, there is currently, if you look at, just averages, yes, there's a discrepancy between the pay of men and women, but that comes down to the fact that men are working harder jobs. They're working longer hours. They're likely to work more than one job. So I'm forgetting. I believe it may have been the New York Times or the Washington Post or something like that, but they actually reported that on a per hour basis, women underneath, I believe, is between men and women underneath the age of 30, women were actually out earning men in a per hour basis, even though men were earning more money overall. And mostly that was because in large cities, jobs were, giving more money to women for, the same job that men were doing. So if I can find that article, I will mention it. I'll see if I can find it really quickly. So that way I'm not sounding crazy. Let me find that real quick.
We're gonna do a brief pause here while he looks for that.
Here we go. Pew Research Center.
Dude, wait, give me a second. I was the camera recording over.
Oh, okay.
Wait for silence. And you're like, okay. As soon as I fucking click stop, so there's just like at the end of the recording, it's like, okay. Also, before I start this last 10 minutes, we'll do like a couple more minutes, and we're gonna do our stinger and say goodbye because it's getting late. I gotta
Yeah.
edit this and shit.
Yeah.
But so we'll come back and we'll start wrapping it up.
Okay.
And action.
Okay. So I found it. This one is actually a research study from Pew Research. And here we go. It's just in the first two paragraphs. It makes a quick summary of this. Women in the United States continue to earn less than men on average. Among full-time, year-round workers in 2019, women's median annual earnings were 82% of those of men. That is, taking all men, all women, doesn't look at anything, just total earnings, lumps them together. The gender wage gap is narrower among younger workers nationally, and the gap varies across geographical areas. In fact, in 22 of 250 U.S. metropolitan areas, women under the age of 30 earn the same amount as or more than their male counterparts, according to a new Pew Research Center analysis of Census Bureau data. And it does go in depth and explain that. So, first off, the wage gap is a myth. It doesn't exist. It's entirely based on just the grand sum average of all the earnings.
It was 78 cents to the dollar, whatever.
77 cents to the dollar.
Whatever it was a base off of very skewed and inaccurate polling and information.
Yeah, and as mentioned, it didn't take into account use of sick leave, use of vacation time, how any overtime that is worked. It didn't take into account profession, how dangerous the job was, etc., etc., etc. It didn't take into account anything other than the grand sum total earnings of all men in the United States and the grand sum total earnings of all women in the United States. That is it. It didn't look into anything else, and that's where you get the 77 cents on the dollar.
Exactly. All right. Well, we're going to wrap up this episode of Goon Squad tonight, and we'll do a new episode later. I wanted to thank Spitfire 7 for coming out tonight and talking on these subjects with us and providing his input. And hopefully this is the start of a brand new show that we're going to be doing. So I just like to say thank you, Spit, for showing up, and hopefully we have you again. Just let me know if you want to come back.
All right, awesome. And if anybody wants to find me, it is Spitfire7, SPITFYREVII 7 in Roman numerals on YouTube. I have a Twitch. I'm not remembering it at the moment. I will have it pinned down below in my video. Feel free to check me out. And what's your handle, Anarchy? Your current one?
Yes, please check him out. I'm OGAnarchy. I'm Anarchy on a lot of different gaming stuff. But I am OGAnarchy on YouTube. So if you want to subscribe to me, please do. It's also on this video. So, and I will link Spitfire 7 stuff down below so you can send him some love too. All right.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for tuning in, guys.